A 17-year-old girl walks into her cousin's house at 8:47 p.m. on a Thursday night in January. She never walks out, but 10 minutes later, two other people walk in. And when you see what the second camera catches, you'll understand why her mother spent 3 months digging through garbage with her bare hands. The question isn't what happened to her. The question is, how many people knew it was happening while she was still alive? This is the story of how a family member became a predator. She wanted to study cosmetology after graduation, worked part-time at Target, saving money for a better car. Thursday nights were her night off from work, usually hung out with friends. But this specific Thursday, she told her mother she was going to see her cousin Jaylen Booker, 23 years old, no steady job, lived alone in a small rental house on Maple Avenue, about 3 miles from Belle's apartment. Their relationship up until that point seemed normal. Cousins who saw each other at family gatherings. Nothing unusual, except for one thing that Chenise noticed 6 weeks before that Thursday. Jaylen had started texting Belle more frequently, every day, sometimes multiple times. Chenise asked Belle about it once, and Belle said, "It's just Jaylen being bored. He has no friends." That's what most people assumed when Belle was first reported missing. That's what Jaylen's initial statement to police suggested when they finally bothered to question him 4 days later. Wrong. Because what actually happened requires understanding something about Jaylen that nobody in the family knew, until investigators started digging into his phone records and social media accounts 3 weeks after Belle disappeared. Jaylen had been obsessed with Belle. Not in a family way, for months. Possibly longer. He had created fake Instagram accounts to follow her without her knowing. He had screenshots of her photos saved in a hidden folder on his phone. Over 200 images. He had searched her name combined with disturbing keywords I won't repeat here. But the search history was entered as evidence at trial. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a sudden escalation. This was planned. Jaylen didn't work alone. And that's where the second camera comes in. The first footage is from Jaylen's own doorbell camera, which police only obtained after getting a warrant 11 days after Belle was reported missing. 11 days. Because initially they classified her as a runaway, despite Chenise insisting Belle would never leave without telling her, would never leave her phone behind, would never miss school. The footage shows Belle arriving at his house at 8:47 p.m. They walk inside. The door closes. Normal. The last time anyone sees Belle Morgan walking on her own 2 feet. Now, here's what you don't expect. 10 minutes later, at 8:57 p.m., a second camera from a neighbor's house across the street captures 2 males approaching Jaylen's house from the side. They don't knock. They don't ring the doorbell. They enter through the side door. Both males are in their early 20s. Police eventually identified them as Trent Vasquez and Cameron Wells, both 22 years old, both friends of Jaylen. During initial questioning, both claimed they weren't at Jaylen's house that night. Jaylen also claimed nobody else was there that night. It was just him and Belle hanging out. She left around 10 p.m. What actually happened is, Chenise Morgan became her own investigator because police did nothing for 4 days. She went door to door in Jaylen's neighborhood, asking if anyone had cameras. She found the neighbor with the second footage. She watched it herself first, before even showing police. She recognized something in that footage that made her drive directly to the police station and demand they arrest Jaylen immediately. What did she see? The 2 males who entered at 8:57 p.m. left at 9:35 p.m. They were carrying something large, wrapped in what appears to be a dark blanket. They put it in the trunk of a vehicle parked on the street. They drove away. Jaylen's camera would have caught them leaving through the front, but Jaylen's camera mysteriously stopped recording at 9:15 p.m. He later claimed the battery died. The battery was hardwired to his house electricity. Jaylen turned off his camera at 9:15 p.m. But Belle had already been inside for 28 minutes at that point, and Trent and Cameron had already been inside for 18 minutes. So what happened in those 18 minutes before Jaylen decided he needed to stop recording? Here's what investigators believe, based on phone records and testimony from a 4th person who was offered immunity in exchange for information. Jaylen had texted Trent at 8:52 p.m., 5 minutes after Belle arrived. The text said, "Now." Trent and Cameron lived together in an apartment 4 blocks away. They arrived at 8:57 p.m., 5 minutes after receiving that text. The immunity witness didn't know specifics, but said Trent had mentioned something about teaching someone a lesson, about a girl who needed to learn respect. The witness assumed it was about a girl Trent was seeing, not about Jaylen's cousin. He didn't ask questions. That's what he testified. Whether you believe, that is your decision. So now we have a timeline. Belle enters at 8:47 p.m. Jaylen texts Trent at 8:52 p.m. Trent and Cameron arrive at 8:57 p.m. Camera stops at 9:15 p.m. Trent and Cameron leave with wrapped object at 9:35 p.m. Jaylen's neighbor, 3 houses down, testified she heard shouting from Jaylen's house around 9 p.m. Female voice, she said. But she didn't think much of it, because Jaylen often had people over who were loud. She didn't call police. Nobody called police. Belle's phone last pinged at 9:03 p.m. location, Jaylen's house. After that, nothing. Phone was never recovered. Chenise had tried calling Belle at 10:30 p.m. that night when Belle wasn't home yet. Straight to voicemail. Tried again at 11:00 p.m. voicemail. At midnight, Chenise drove to Jaylen's house, knocked on the door. Jaylen answered. Said Belle had left around 10 p.m. Said she seemed fine. Said maybe she went to a friend's house. Chenise asked if she could look inside. Jaylen said no. It's late. I'm going to bed. Chenise called police at 12:30 a.m. to report Belle missing. Police response: they told Chenise to wait 24 hours. Teenagers run away all the time. She'll probably come home. Chenise said, my daughter doesn't run away. They said, call back tomorrow if she's still gone. She called back the next morning. They filed a report. They didn't go to Jaylen's house until Saturday, 2 full days after Belle disappeared. When they did finally interview Jaylen, he gave them the story about Belle leaving at 10 p.m. They didn't ask for his doorbell footage. They didn't ask if anyone else was there. They took his statement and left. It wasn't until Chenise found the second camera footage and brought it to the station on Monday that police finally started treating this as something other than a runaway case. They got a warrant for Jaylen's house, searched it on Tuesday, 5 days after Belle vanished. They found cleaning supplies, recently purchased. Receipt from a hardware store dated Friday morning. They found small traces of blood in the bathroom. They arrested Jaylen on Tuesday night. Arrested Trent and Cameron on Wednesday morning. All 3 initially maintained their innocence. All 3 had lawyers. All 3 said nothing. And then Trent broke. Trent's lawyer worked out a deal. Testimony against Jaylen and Cameron in exchange for reduced charges. Here's what Trent said happened. According to court transcripts, Jaylen had been planning this for weeks. He told Trent about his obsession with Belle. Told him he wanted to scare her. Wanted to make her understand that he could control her. Trent thought Jaylen was joking. Until Jaylen offered him money, $500 to help. Trent agreed. Cameron came along because Trent said he needed backup. The plan, according to Trent, was supposed to be intimidation. Jaylen wanted Belle tied up, wanted to film her crying, wanted to show her that he had power over her. That's what Trent thought was going to happen. But when they arrived at 8:57 p.m., Belle was already unconscious on the floor. Trent said he asked what happened. Jaylen said she tried to leave when he told her he loved her romantically, so he hit her. Hit her with, what? A lamp. Where's the lamp? Broken. Threw it away earlier. Trent testified he wanted to leave right then. But Jaylen offered him another $1,000 to help get rid of the body. Trent said he felt trapped. That's his testimony. Whether you believe someone can feel trapped while actively helping dispose of a teenage girl's body is something the jury had to decide. They wrapped Belle in a comforter from Jaylen's bedroom, carried her to the vehicle, drove to a commercial dumpster behind a strip mall on Pacific Avenue, 2 miles away. This is at 9:45 p.m., according to GPS data from Trent's phone. They threw the wrapped body into the dumpster, drove back to Jaylen's house. Trent and Cameron left. Jaylen stayed up all night cleaning. By the time police knew to search for Belle's body in a landfill, it was Sunday. By then, 3 more days of garbage from the entire area had been dumped on top of wherever Belle was. They searched for 11 weeks. They brought in cadaver dogs, ground-penetrating radar, teams of volunteers, including Chenise, who showed up every single day in protective gear, digging through trash. They never found her. Jaylen's trial started 8 months later. Prosecution had the camera footage, had the GPS data, had the blood evidence, had Trent's testimony, had Jaylen's phone records showing his obsession. Defense argued no body means no murder. Maybe Belle is still alive somewhere. And all of this is circumstantial. The jury didn't buy it. Guilty of second-degree murder. 30 years minimum. Cameron took a plea deal, testified against Jaylen, received 15 years. Trent received 12 years for his testimony and cooperation. All 3 are currently incarcerated in different Washington state prisons. But here's what nobody talks about. During Jaylen's interrogation, before his lawyer arrived, police asked him one question that was never answered. They asked, "Where exactly in the dumpster did you put her?" Jaylen said, "I didn't. I wasn't there." Then they confronted him with Trent's statement. Jaylen went quiet. Then he said something strange. He said, "You're not going to find her." Officer said, "Why not?" Jaylen said, "Because I made sure." What does that mean? Prosecution theorized during trial that Jaylen had gone back to the dumpster that night after Trent and Cameron left and done something else to the body, something that would make identification impossible, even if found. But they had Jaylen's credit card statement showing a purchase at a 24-hour hardware store at 11:37 p.m. that Thursday night. Jaylen claimed he'd been planning to fix his sink. The jury heard this theory. The jury saw the receipt. The jury convicted anyway. But without a body, there's no way to know what condition Belle was in when she was thrown away, and what condition she was in by the time Jaylen potentially went back. Chenise Morgan gave one interview after the trial to a local news station. She said she doesn't feel closure, because closure requires bringing your daughter home. She said she still drives to that landfill sometimes, just sits in her car in the parking lot, knowing her daughter is somewhere under tons of garbage. She said they moved to a different apartment because Imani couldn't sleep knowing Belle never came home to the old one. She said something else that stayed with me. She said, "The worst part isn't not knowing what happened. We know what happened. The worst part is knowing that for those 38 minutes while Trent and Cameron were in that house, Belle might have still been alive, might have been conscious, might have been calling for help. And 2 additional people chose to help Jaylen instead of helping her. Here's the systemic failure nobody wants to talk about. Police wait time for missing persons reports involving black teenagers is on average 48 hours longer than for white teenagers. That's not my opinion. That's data from a study by the Black and Missing Foundation. If police had taken Chenise seriously on Thursday night, they might have found evidence that was cleaned away by Tuesday. They might have tracked that garbage truck before it reached the landfill. They might have found Belle in time to give her mother a burial, but they didn't. And Jaylen knew they wouldn't. According to testimony from the immunity witness, Jaylen had specifically said that police wouldn't look for a black girl from that neighborhood for days. He was right. He had a 4-day head start to clean, destroy, and dispose. The camera footage that convicted him only exists because a neighbor decided to keep his security recordings for 2 weeks before deleting them, and because a mother refused to stop pushing when everyone official told her to wait. If that neighbor had deleted his footage after the standard 1-week period, there would be no evidence of Trent and Cameron entering, no evidence of them leaving with anything, no contradiction to Jaylen's story. A 17-year-old girl's justice depended entirely on one neighbor's storage settings and one mother's refusal to accept being dismissed. Belle would be 20 years old now. She'd be in college or working in a salon, doing what she loved. Chenise said in that interview that Imani doesn't go anywhere alone anymore, doesn't trust anyone anymore, sees threats everywhere, because she learned that family can kill you and friends will help hide it. If you're in law enforcement and you're listening to this, understand that every hour you delay investigating a missing person report is an hour someone has to destroy evidence. Every time you assume runaway instead of abduction, you give predators time to cover their tracks. Belle Morgan's case should be taught in every police academy as an example of what happens when you don't take missing black girls seriously from minute one. Jaylen Booker will be eligible for parole in 2052. Trent Vasquez will be eligible in 2034. Cameron Wells in 2037. Belle Morgan will still be in a landfill, under 30 years of garbage. If Jaylen didn't do something that night that ensured she'd never be whole enough to identify, her mother will still be looking. That's what she said in the interview. She said, "Even when I'm 80, even when I can't physically dig anymore, I'll hire people to keep searching, because my daughter deserves to come home." This is what it looks like when it's a cousin who decides ownership matters more than love. This is what it looks like when 2 friends decide money matters more than humanity. And this is what it looks like when the system designed to protect vulnerable people decides some people are less worth protecting than others. Belle Morgan was 17. She wanted to do hair. She's still missing.